Good morning and welcome to Beef-Link TV, your daily dose of industry information. Today we welcome back Pawel from our policy and compliance team, and we're here today to talk about customs, particularly letters of empowerment. So firstly, Pawel, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Leslie.
Let's talk customs representation and something that is we've talked about quite often. Why is that?
Customs representation is the sort of very basis and the backbone of what we do as customs agents. So if someone wants to use our services, they need to appoint a customs representative or a customs agent, as the new legislation refers to them as. So that's why we talk about it so often, because there's quite a lot of things related to customs representation that are very, very important. And members who fail to follow the rules put themselves in danger.
Yeah.
Just so simple as that, basically. If you don't know what you're doing as a customs agent, that means you're risking quite a lot financially, usually.
Sure.
So that's why we talk about it so often, and that's why we'll probably keep talking about it. It will happen again. Okay, I can assure you of that.
Yeah. So what about acceptable formats, and who should sign the empowerment form in the first place?
The empowerment letters or authority letters, there's a number of sort of terms to refer to that. But what we're talking about is a letter empowering a customs agent to represent another party, another person or a business, is the basis for customs representation. Because if you haven't got that letter, if you're not empowered by a business or a private person as well, that could be that could apply to private individuals, and that means you may be acting in your own name and on your own behalf, which means that you will not be sharing liability, as may be a case with indirect customs representation. No, you may be deemed to be solely liable for customs debt. As you can imagine, something goes wrong, you may suddenly find yourself in trouble, especially when we talk about big sums of money. So most importantly, agents, customs agents, intermediaries, they need to make sure that they are empowered to represent a business before they do anything on their behalf, before they proceed into that sort of customs work per se.
Sure.
And that's why it's so important, and that's why we need to look at that today.
Sure. And are there any other practical recommendations from BIFA on this topic?
A number. I mean, what we always say is know your customer, due diligence, know who you sign the letter with. Obviously, make sure you understand the establishment requirements, because that will very much determine whether you can represent someone under direct or indirect representation. There's a number of other things that we need to consider. But here I think we would like to talk about who can sign an empowerment letter or a letter of authority on behalf of a business in particular. And that has become quite a topic actually now, because again, what we see is that there is relatively little understanding as to who can sign a document on behalf of a trading company. And if we take this sort of very strict view, our guidance is very clear. It should be a company director or a company secretary as listed in Companies House. And this is where we refer to Companies Act 2006, Section 44. It tells you very, very precisely who can sign a document to make it valid on behalf of a company. So it cannot just be anybody. So if you send a letter of empowerment to an importer or an exporter, you need to make sure that whoever signs that is preferably a company secretary or a company director. And you can verify it against Companies House. Now, we obviously understand that with companies which are multinationals, getting hold of a company director or a company secretary may be quite difficult because they may be based somewhere else, and obviously they don't really want to talk about customs matters. They may not know it. So the legislation also potentially allows you to use a signatory of someone who's got express or implied authority to represent the business. But this is where you potentially step into a sort of bit murky territory, because if someone's got express or implied authority, how do you verify that? You may want to see a letter which says that this particular person has authority to sign documents on behalf of a company. So our guidance, primary guidance, a company director or a company secretary, and you can verify that against Companies House. After that, it has to be someone who has authority to become, to represent and sign documents on behalf of a company. It can't just be anybody.
Sure.
That's probably the most important takeaway from this particular discussion.
Sure. And Is there any other questions from members they can get in contact with you? Is that correct? They can do that?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got quite a lot of material on BFAR website, and as you know, we've talked about it more than once already, and we'll talk again more than once, I'm sure, in the future. But please review BFAR website. There's quite a lot of information about due diligence, about knowing your customer. But most importantly, make sure that you have procedures in place which will allow you to become or to remain compliant. You know what's required. You know that you have to be empowered to represent a business, regardless of the type of representation, direct, indirect. And it's consistent. And it has to be consistent. You can't just risk that today I remember about it and tomorrow I'm not in the office and someone may forget. So I think these are the very important things that you have to consider. But then again, I think members, if you have any questions, please contact us. We're quite happy to help. And I think that's it really for today.
That's great. Thank you very much, Pawel. That's all very interesting advice for our members, as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.
Pawel's contact details will be in the description below of this video. That's all for today's episode of BFIR Link TV, your daily dose of industry information.